Hey guys, it's Mrs. Olenichek, and today I'm going to talk to you about human digestion, in particular the structures of the human digestive system. It's always good to start with the big picture. So, what do animals need to live? Why do we eat? Well, we need energy. In order to get energy, we need food. We also need oxygen. And we break that food down in the presence of oxygen to get energy, or ATP. We also need raw materials to build bodies. Essentially, food is raw materials so that we can build new macromolecules. So we need amino acids, sugars, fats, and nucleotides. And so this is why we need to eat, because we need energy and we need to build bodies. So getting and using food. So here's some vocabulary to get us started. So first we have ingestion, that's taking in food. Then there's digestion, and that can be broken down into mechanical digestion, which is just breaking up food into smaller pieces. The smaller the piece, the more surface area, and so the easier for chemical digestion to occur. So that's where you break down food into molecules small enough to be absorbed into cells. Enzymes are going to be super important for this because they're going to allow those reactions to happen. So all of this chemical digestion is dependent on the appropriate enzymes. Next is absorption. And so this is absorbing nutrients across cell membranes. That can be accomplished through diffusion or facilitated diffusion, and then active transport. And then last but not least is elimination. And this is getting rid of undigested material. Generally, this is your solid waste or poop. So this is food that has not been digested, so you didn't use it and you're getting rid of it. Here you see two examples of digestion. You have intracellular digestion, that's digestion that occurs within the cell. And then you have extracellular digestion, and that's digestion that occurs outside of the cell. And so our digestive system is more of this extracellular digestion. We're basically this one big long tube within a tube. Unlike the hydra here, we have two openings. So we have a mouth and an anus, and so food would travel through that tube and then leave in this direction. Whereas they have just one entrance and exit. So food comes in, gets broken down, absorbed, and then whatever doesn't get absorbed gets spit back out that way. So here's a diagram of our digestive system. When you think about the human body, it's useful to think of it as a tube inside of a tube. And the digestive system is just one long tube that food passes through. And along the way, it gets broken down into small and smaller pieces. And you absorb the good stuff, the stuff that you want, and then you eliminate the rest. And so all the way down through the digestive system, food's going to pass, get broken down and absorbed, and then be eliminated. You also have accessory organs, and these are organs generally that make enzymes and dump them into the digestive tube. So we're going to start at the beginning and work our way down, and we'll come back to this diagram as we go. So first we have the mouth. That's where digestion begins. And its main functions are going to be mechanical digestion, so breaking your food up into smaller pieces. Your teeth and tongue are very important for that. And then chemical digestion starts here too. So your saliva actually contains all of this stuff. So you have amylase, which begins digestion of starches. You have mucus, which protects the lining of your digestive system and also lubricates your food to make it easier to swallow. You have buffers in your saliva, which help to neutralize some of the acid that's in your food and prevent tooth decay. And then you have some antibacterial chemicals that help kill harmful bacteria that enters your mouth with food. So all of this is what's going on as you're chewing. So all of that in your spit. Now, the process of swallowing and not choking is actually more complicated than it sounds. You have a specialized structure called the epiglottis, and the epiglottis acts kind of like a gatekeeper. So you'll notice here, there's the epiglottis, right? You have one entrance through your nose and mouth, and you come over here. This is the trachea. The trachea goes to your lungs, and the esophagus goes down to your stomach. So this is the digestive tube, and this is the respiratory or breathing tube. And if you've ever gotten something going down the wrong way, it actually usually gets stuck over here in the epiglottis. It usually will not go down into your lungs. You'll start coughing before that happens. But that's what it means. You're trying to make sure that food goes to the stomach and air goes to the lungs. And the epiglottis's job is to ensure that that happens. So it's just a flap of cartilage. And if you put your hand on your throat and you swallow, you can actually feel it. So try that. Put your hand on your throat, like by where your Adam's apple would be, and just swallow. That's your epiglottis. And then that action, that rhythmic kind of contraction, is something called peristalsis. And this is an involuntary muscle contraction that helps move through food through your digestive system. So in the mouth, again, you break up food, digest starch, kill germs, moisten food, and send it on down the esophagus to the stomach. So let me go back for a second, just make sure. So this over here, that long tube, that's going to be your esophagus. So now we're in the stomach. Well, the stomach's function is, one, to disinfect your food. So you have some hydrochloric acid in the stomach, and that will kill bacteria. It's also important for food storage. So it can stretch to fill about 2 liters worth of food. So you can kind of parse it out till you're ready to digest all of that food. It doesn't all enter your small intestine at once. And you start digestion of protein here. So the main digestive enzyme in the stomach is pepsin. And pepsin starts the digestion of proteins into amino acids. One really interesting fact is that your stomach is made out of protein. And so if you have enzymes that digest proteins, it's really important that they don't start digesting you. And so pepsin is only activated when it's in a very low pH environment. And so this hydrochloric acid actually sets up the environment so that the pepsin can function. And so it's stored in a form that will not function, so it's not at its optimal pH until the hydrochloric acid gets dumped into the stomach. And then you have mucus secreted that protects your stomach from digesting itself. So we had mouth through esophagus into the stomach. Fun fact, ulcers. We used to think they were caused by stress, but now we know that they're actually caused by bacterial infections in the stomach. So most ulcers are actually caused by something called H. pylori bacteria. And so now you can treat an ulcer with antibiotics. So now we've gone from the mouth down the esophagus into the stomach. We've started digesting starches and proteins. And now we get to the small intestine. And the small intestine is where most digestion actually takes place. So the small intestine is where carbohydrates get digested, proteins get digested, and lipids get digested. And then where everything gets absorbed. So the small intestine has a really big job. Carbohydrates get digested with something called amylase. Trypsin and chymotrypsin help digest proteins, and then you have bile and lipase helping out with the fats. Most of your nutrient absorption actually occurs in the small intestine, and it moves into body cells, again, by diffusion and active transport. So if we look more closely at the structure of the small intestine, here's where that structure, function, specialized cell stuff comes into play a lot. You'll notice that you have folds upon folds upon folds. So if you were to open up the small intestine and look at the lining, you have all of these microvilli on top of villi that are all folded on top of each other. And this serves to increase surface area for absorption. So the more surface area, the more contact you have with the nutrients that are being transported, and the more readily they can be absorbed. If you were to look at the surface area of your small intestine, it can stretch to cover about the size of a tennis court, just to give you an idea of what you're dealing with. So here we have some of our accessory organs. The pancreas makes most of your digestive enzymes. So those enzymes that are going to digest proteins and starches and lipase. So it really makes all of the enzymes that get dumped into the small intestine. And it's this feathery structure here. The liver produces bile and stores it in the gallbladder. So the liver makes bile, stores it in the gallbladder, and when you have a very fatty meal, the gallbladder will then dump the bile in there. And bile serves as a physical digestion, so it breaks apart the fats, it emulsifies them, makes it easier for the lipase to act on them. So here you go, there's your pancreas, small intestine. Here are the enzymes that are produced and then secreted from the pancreas into the small intestine. The pancreas also makes buffers that help neutralize the acid from the stomach. This is another control mechanism, so the trypsin and chymotrypsin actually like it a little bit closer to basic. So not quite as extreme. I think they like it around pH of 8. Your liver and gallbladder. So again, your liver is going to produce bile, which helps break up fats. And then the gallbladder is just there to store store bile. So that's why you can have your gallbladder removed. Another fun fact, bile contains color from old red blood cells collected in the liver. Iron rusts and makes your feces brown. So now we've traveled through the mouth into the esophagus, down to the stomach, now the small intestine, and last but not least, we enter the colon, or the large intestine. The main job of your large intestine is to reabsorb water. And this is really important because it takes a lot of water to digest your food. So you dump a lot of water into the digestive system. So if you didn't reabsorb it, you'd become dehydrated quite quickly. If you don't absorb enough water, that's when you have diarrhea. And if you absorb too much, that's when you become constipated. In your large intestine, you also have a large community of bacteria, and many of these are helpful. We're only now learning about how helpful they are, but one we do know is in there is E. coli. It actually will digest cellulose, fruits and vegetables, and produce vitamins. So this is a good example of a symbiotic relationship where we both help each other out. They do generate some gases, so you can blame the gas on them. And then, so you have your appendix. We're not really sure what that does. It's what we call a vestigial organ. And then the rectum. This is the last section of your large intestine, and it eliminates what's left over. So cellulose and fiber or roughage. And this is important because it keeps everything moving. So if you have any questions, don't forget to ask, and I hope you enjoyed